Hello, good evening. Welcome to Live After 5. I'd like to talk to you about the really important webinar that we're running tomorrow at 12:30 until 1:45, 45-minute webinar. It's for property owners. It is a webinar that we're hosting at Liberty Blue Estate Agents in conjunction with our guest speaker, Mr. Tim Ryan. Hi Kath, hi Christine, thanks for watching. This webinar is for property owners and it is about legislative changes. Really important webinar if you are a property owner and you are renting out your property. So there's been quite a lot of changes in the legislation in the last 18 months, in most especially since COVID. And Tim Ryan is our guest speaker. He's a journalist. He is a former board member of the Residential Tenancy Board, and he is extremely experienced in terms of tenancy disputes. He is a mine full of information. He really is. And he speaks in such a way he's really easy to understand. And he explains it simply, the legislative changes, and what landlords, property owners' responsibilities are. So, for example, we've been renting and managing property now for 24 years. And what we've noticed since changes in legislation, we get quite a few calls from property owners who don't actually know about the legislation. It's very strict legislation. So, for example, if you're a property owner and you are thinking of selling your property, there are specific requirements in terms of giving your tenants notice. You do need to give the correct notice, and the days of 28 days notice are no longer with us. If you're looking as a tenant or property owner to check what your notice period is, it is dependent on the date you moved into the property, and it's also detailed on the RTB. The RTB, I'll put a link here after the video, is complete. It is a brilliant resource. All of the information is there. Sometimes people then say to us, look, the tenant is a 1-year lease. I'm not going to go ahead and renew the lease. There is very strict legislation around security of tenure. So if you're a tenant or you're a property owner, if your tenant is in the property over 6 months, then you can really only give notice on certain grounds. 1, if you're selling the property. 2, if you are an immediate family member moving in. Or 3, if you're doing substantial renovation works. Now, when it comes to substantial renovation works, that is detailed again on the RTB. Painting, new furniture, new flooring does not comply with that requirement. And if you are thinking of selling, then you need to give an affidavit from your solicitor to state that you're selling the property. A simple notice won't do. And then when it comes to dispute, the Residential Tenancy Board is the platform for disputes, and Tim will talk a bit about that. And then the rent pressure zone. So Waterford is part of the rent pressure zone, and that means that if you want to check if your rental property is in the rent pressure zone, then you type in RPZ, which stands for rent pressure zone. You put in the address or the postcode, and it'll tell you if the property is in the rent pressure zone. Now, prior to the most recent legislation, rent could only be increased by 4%, and now that's changed and it's actually in line with inflation, so it's less for the moment, depending on where inflation goes. So this webinar is on tomorrow. I'll put a link to the webinar. If you're interested in going along, just register. If you'd like to watch the webinar, but you can't watch it at 12:30 tomorrow, then you just need to register, and everybody who's registered will get a link to the webinar and you can actually watch it afterwards. So I hope you found that of some interest. The webinar is really informative, and if you have a property and you are renting it out, I would highly recommend you register. Feel free to tell a friend. So that's it for this evening, and as I always say, slán go fóill.